Do you have an interest in herbs? Do you like being out and about in nature? Do you have a long white beard and you like wearing robes? Well, you might want to be the Druid in Talisman. Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter and today we're going to be doing another Talisman character guide. And yes, this time it is the Druid. I'm trying to kind of mix it up between strength-based characters and spellcasters that use craft. And this is one of those. The Druid, as you can imagine, will be using spells. Now we have done some other character guides, I can't remember now, we're doing quite a few, but we have got a playlist for them, so you can click on the playlist and you can binge watch them to get your hints and tips to claim the crown of command. Let's just see how the Druid can do that. The Druid. What are the stats for the Druid? Well, starts in the forest, alignment is neutral, strength is 2, craft is 4, life is 4, fate is 4, and gold is 1. Special abilities for the Druid. Well, you begin the game with 1 spell, which is always useful. Number 2, you may change your alignment at will. At any given time, though, you can only be 1 alignment. For example, if you are carrying the rune sword and you wish to pray at the chapel, you must ditch the rune sword. And number 3, whenever you land in the woods, you may gain your full complement of spells according to your current craft. And we will go into these special abilities in a second in a bit more detail. Now the Druid's strength, if you like, that lies with spell casting and utilising this alignment special ability. Also, having spells during the game and knowing when to use them can be a massive advantage. And also, the starting values are pretty good to start with. All the starting values for the Druid are 4, apart from strength, which is 2. And not many base game characters actually have that kind of stats. So let's take a look at the special abilities in further detail. Well, yes, number 1 was you begin the game with 1 spell. Maybe I need a spell to make me speak properly. So basically you take the top 1 from the shuffled spell deck, and there are 24 spells in the base game, which I was surprised at. I thought there were more spells in the actual base game, but there are only 24. So if you are just playing, I'm not going into any expansions with this. If you are playing just with the base game, then there are 24 spells. Obviously, if you've got expansions, most of them have extra spells, so there might be more that you will be choosing from. Now, only 5 characters out of 14 base game characters start the game with 1 or more spells, and they are the Druid, Sorceress, Priest, Wizard and Prophetess. So again, you're one of a select few that has this slight advantage. Now, starting with a spell is very useful. Why is it useful? Well, as I say, there's not that many that actually start the game with a spell, and you have to acquire spells, and they're not necessarily in the early start of the game, they're not necessarily that easy to come by. So e.g. you could have, you pick it at random, you could have the teleport, divination, I wouldn't be able to pronounce that, divination, I think that's it, and nullify. Now teleport, so this is early on, so if you have the teleport one early on, you can cast that to land on another player to engage them in combat. Now if you win, you can claim an object or gold. So again, that's a very, straight away you can use that within, your first couple of rounds. Or you can encounter another space, so you could teleport somewhere else. You could go to the crags straight away, on your first go or your second go to gain a strength. Forest, you can try and gain a craft. Or you can go into the ruins, to draw 2 adventure cards, because obviously the more adventure cards you get, the more better items you can collect or you can, if you get enemies, you can fight them quicker. So you kind of could use the teleport in two ways: land on a player to get gold or to get an object, or you can go to one of those spaces to try and benefit yourself in the ways that I suggested. If you've got the divination card spell, you can cast that before you move and take a secret look at the top 5 cards on the adventure deck. So that's pretty cool, because in the early game you might want to avoid certain enemies. So if you know there are certain enemies coming up, you might not want to try to draw adventure cards. Or consequently, if you know there's some cool magical items coming up, you might think, yeah, I just know the top 5 cards, so I'll try every single time to land to get those adventure cards. So if you had the combination, I guess, if you then picked up another spell, this is what I mean by using spells. If you had the teleport and the divination, and you'd already used the divination, and you knew that something really cool was coming up, you could teleport to a specific space to land there to definitely pick up an adventure card. So again, it's that use of combination. And the nullify, if you had the nullify card straight away, these are all just examples. You can cast at any time on a character. Now, they must discard all of their spells. So for example, if it's just the first go, and you're up against the sorceress and the priest is there and the wizard, they've already started the game with 1 spell. If you cast that, they'll have to get rid of their spells. Now, they may not have a special ability that then means they can just take another spell. So again, if you could be clever with the early use of your spells. And number 2, you may change your alignment at will. At any given time, though, you can only be 1 alignment. For example, if you're carrying the rune sword and you wish to pray at the chapel, you must ditch the rune sword. There are 3 alignments in Talisman. They are good, evil, and neutral. And this sort of shows the character's personality. So good is meant to be polite and law-abiding. Evil is meant to be black-hearted villains. And neutral falls somewhere in between. You don't mind doing a few evil things, but equally you might help someone out and be good. So when changing, you take the alignment card and place it face up to show your new alignment, because everybody needs to know what alignment you are, because you don't want to get into two disputes to say, oh no, I thought you were evil, no, I thought you were good, and so it needs to be clear for everybody. One side shows the good and one side is evil. There are neutral cards, but they are only with the Sacred Pool expansion, and there are 4 in the City expansion as well. So I guess they introduced these neutral cards because obviously if you are neutral, you need to show that as well. So what I recommend, if you haven't got the neutral cards but you do have the good and evil cards, then obviously if you've changed back to neutral, then you just put the card back into the stockpile. So then if you've got no card, that would indicate that you are neutral. And why is that useful? Well, let's use the example on the card. If you're in the chapel, you can heal up to your starting life value for free, or you can pray to gain good things, and that's only if you are good. But the rune sword, no good character may have the rune sword, and that adds 1 strength during battle. And if you defeat an enemy or cause another character to lose a life, you gain a life. So obviously, if you did have the rune sword and it says no good character, so you could be neutral or evil to carry the rune sword. But if you then wanted to go to the chapel to pray and heal up for free, then you would need to be good. Now you'd have to ditch the rune sword, and you couldn't ditch it and then pick it up again on the same turn. You'd have to move off that space where you ditched it and then pick it up again. But when you do that, obviously someone else can equally go to that space if they roll the number, or if they have a teleport spell, that's what I mean by the teleport spells, and pick up that rune sword if they wanted to, if they weren't a good character. You can take advantage, so if you're swapping your alignment, you can take advantage of the different spaces. So as I say, the chapel, you could go there. If you're good, you'll heal up for free to pray for good things. In the graveyard, if you're evil, you can replenish your starting fate value for free, and also you can pray for good things as well. You can also take advantage of stranger and adventure cards. Now, some punish or reward certain alignments. For example, the fairies, a stranger. The first good character will, here we go. Yes, the first good character will grant, can't read my notes there, will grant the first good character one of the following wishes. So you would gain a spell, gold, craft, strength, life, fate, or teleport to any other space in the region. And that's only good character that the fairy will offer that to. Equally, the Phantom is a stranger. The first evil character will gain a spell, gold, strength, craft, fate, or life, or teleport to any other space in the region. Again, but that's specifically for evil. There's a card that's Evil Darkness. It's an event. All characters except evil must miss one turn. So again, it benefits you or doesn't benefit you depending on what your alignment is. There's an event which is the Angel. If you're good, you gain a life. If you're evil, you lose one life. If you're neutral, there's no effect. So you have to watch what objects you have, because you may have to drop them. You can only change alignment once per turn, and that applies to all characters. So whenever you change alignment, so because other characters could be changing alignment. Oh, we've got a phone call. Maybe that's the Druid now. Yes. Sorry about that. Yes, so with alignment, all characters, because sometimes there could be a spell the way you can change your alignment, but you can only do it once per turn. And also, number 3, the special ability, whenever you land in the woods, you may gain your full complement of spells according to your current craft. Now, there is a spell guide in the rules, as you can imagine. There's a little chart. So if your total craft is 1, you can't have any spells. If it's 2, you can't have any spells. If it's 3, you can have 1 spell. If it's 4, you can have 2 spells. If it's 5, you can have 2 spells. If it's 6 plus, you can have 3 spells. And you can only have a maximum of 3 that you personally can cast. Some objects you load spells up on that, so there could be, I can't remember what it is, I think it's the orb of something or other, the orb of power, let's say, or the orb of spells, where it says place 3 spells on this object and you can cast them as though they were your own spells. So you can have 3 spells plus those spells from any objects as well. So it is good to keep landing on the 3, there's 3 wood spaces in the outer region and 1 wood space in the middle region to keep your spells topped up, because you haven't, as a druid, you start the game with a spell, but you can't, when you cast it, you can't then get another one straight away. So it's a good idea, once your craft starts building, to keep trying to get to the woods, because then you can build up to your 3 spells if you've got 6 plus, and that can be a huge advantage over people that don't have spells. Just a little thing, housekeeping on spells: once they're cast once, they do go to the discard pile. You can't just cast them again and again. They're not reusable, they get discarded. So what tactic to use? Well, you can use your spells wisely. Keep your spells topped up, as I say, to go to the wood spaces. Use your alignment to change special ability wisely too. Remember that you can do that, because sometimes you might get caught out because you forget you can change from being good to evil. That might, especially if you only got 1 life, that could cost you a life if you forget that. The downside to the Druid, well, your strength only starts at 2, so obviously if you've got enemies that fight with the battle and it's using strength, you might be at a disadvantage early on, and you may have to drop powerful objects due to changing alignment. Obviously you have to look at that in the individual incidences just to see if it's worth dropping a really powerful item to change alignment. Favourable place on the board for neutral characters, but remember the Druid can change alignment because he does start off neutral. In the graveyards, in the outer region, if you're neutral, you can replenish your fate value for a cost of 1 gold per fate. 1 gold per fate. If you go to the visit the chapel, if you are neutral, you can heal up your life value for 1 gold per life. So obviously if you've got items that require you to be neutral, it's better to be neutral, then you can still go to these places, but you will have to pay as opposed to getting them for free if you are good or if you're evil, depending on the chapel and the graveyard. You can go to the crags. Now anybody can do this, but this is also a little hint just if you're playing any character. You can go to the crags, do that early on, because if you roll 1 die, you get a 6, a barbarian leads you out, you gain a strength. So again, if you roll other things, various other things happen. So that's a slight gamble, because you might, you get attacked by Spiritcraft 4. So there's a slight gamble there. But if you go to the forest, again, it's the same idea. You roll 1 die. But if you get a 6, a ranger guides you out and you gain a craft. So again, those are good to flit about with just at the early days, just to build up your craft and your strength if you can. And you can also nip off to the city, go to the enchantress. You can gain a craft or strength. You roll a die. But be careful, because if you roll a 1, you'll turn into a slimy little toad for 3 turns, and nobody wants that. But if you gain a 4, you gain a craft. If you roll a 5, you gain a strength. If you roll a 6, you gain a spell. If you roll a 2, though, you do lose 1 strength. If you roll a 1, sorry, if you roll a 3, you lose 1 craft. But remember, you should have some fate, so maybe go to the city if you've got some fate, because you don't really want to be losing craft and strength, or getting turned into a slimy little toad. Also, the ruins and also the oasis spaces, you can draw 2 adventure cards for those. So it's a good idea if you want to try to get the magical objects, get items, they help you power up the adventure. I love picking up adventure cards, so by going to those 2 spaces you'll get 2 in one go as opposed to 1. And also if you go to the Hidden Valley, which is into the middle region, that's 3 adventure cards. Oh yes. Places on the board to avoid for neutral, none really. You know, there's nothing that really will punish on the outer region or the middle region for neutral. The best route to go in the inner region, well, it's more likely that you're going to be building up your craft. Not necessarily, but you have got a 2-point advantage because you start craft 4, whereas you start craft strength. But, you know, that's not always the way. But if you do happen to build up your craft more, then, you know, it's probably more likely that you can do that because you start with a higher one. Then the best route is to go the mines, because you roll 3 dice, you subtract your craft from the total to move directly to. So you roll the 3 die, then you subtract your craft from the die roll. If it's 0, it's mines. If it's 1, it's plane of peril. If it's 2 to 3, it's portal of power. 4 to 5 is warlock's cave, and 6 plus is tavern. So you want the less. You want to get to 0 because you want to stay on the mines. You want to get minus scores. So basically you want to up your craft to sort of 12, 13, because then when you roll the 3 dice, you've got more of a chance of getting 0 and into minus figures. Then you would be moving on to the vampire's tower, which you suffer blood loss. You roll 1 die to determine how many lives the vampire takes from you, and you can discard any number of followers to avoid the loss of life. So each follower you discard prevents a loss of 1 life. If you roll a 1 to 2, you lose 1 life. If you roll a 3 or 4, you lose 2 lives. If you roll 5 or 6, you lose 3 lives. Or, as you say, you can use the followers. It's quite callous, but hey, you know, you want the power, don't you? You want the crown of command. And then the next space will be the pits, where you fight the pit fiends. Roll 1 die, and you fight that many pit fiends with strength 4. So hopefully you've built up your strength as well, because this craft way there's a strength challenge right at the end, and you fight them 1 by 1 until either you are defeated or you defeat all of the pit fiends. And then after you've done that, you can move on your next go to the Valley of Fire. So remember to get that talisman. And let's have a quick recap then. So use your spells wisely, keep them topped up by landing on the wood spaces as much as you can, and obviously building up your craft, because then you can have your full complement of spells. If you get 6 plus craft, you can have full 3. Use your alignment changing special ability wisely too. Remember, you can change your alignment. Don't forget that. It's very handy, because obviously, like I say, if you're picking up different cards or you're landing in spaces that affect good, neutral or evil, then you can change your alignment. Visit the chapel to heal up lives for free, the crags to gain a strength, the forest to gain craft, and the city. Go to the enchantress. If you're lucky, go there, I think, if you've got some fate, to gain a craft, strength or spell. And when you do go into the inner region, go to the craft, the mines route. That way you should be using your craft rather than your strength. There he is. Look at his little face. Quite a handsome chap. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the Druid guide to Talisman. Obviously hints and tips, see how you can win the game, improve your skills. As I say, we have done a few more of these now, and we're going to be doing all the base characters first, and then, yeah, we're going to go into the expansions as well. But we thought we'd do the base ones first, because, you know, if you've got the base ones, then it'll be nice to do a complete picture for you. And remember to subscribe, and if you do like these videos, then please share them, because you can spread the word of the imp. That's all we have time for, so thank you so much for watching. Remember to keep it unreal, especially if you're a druid.